Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's BAInsights session. Today, I'm really pleased to have an excellent guest, a returning guest, to talk to us about this topic. As usual, I'm not going to spend much time introducing the guest. I'm going to let Thea introduce herself. So, Thea, over to you, please.
Sure. Thanks, John. My name is Thea Soehren. I am many things. I am a CBAP. I'm a CSPO. I am the president of the Tampa Bay IIBA chapter, a very active group. I'm the founder of the BA Force Multiplier Movement, and I mentor a lot of people. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk about internships because internships are a great way to give people experience that they can't get jobs because they don't have experience. Give them experience, but it also benefits the organization that brings them in. They get to learn, are these people someone that you would want to hire? So I'm really looking forward to talking about this with you, John.
Excellent. Thank you, Thea. Yeah, thank you, Thea. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the session today as well. And of course, it is on the topic of BA internships. I can't recall whether I mentioned that. I probably should have made sure I did before. What I will say before we get into the details and go through some of the points is that if anyone's watching this, haven't subscribed, please do. Also, if you'd like to leave a like, that's always helpful. It helps circulate the video to other BAs and other people with like-minded interests. And really importantly as well, if you've got comments, you want to share experiences from an intern perspective or from a perspective of someone who's worked with interns or just as a BA, really, really interested to hear what you've got to say. And I'm sure others will as well. But speaking of interest in what people have got to say, I'm definitely interested in what Thea's got to say, of course. So let's ask her some questions and talk about BA internship. And I wonder, Thea, perhaps we could start with, for those looking to get or to looking for an internship for themselves or perhaps for others, what is it that BA internship can offer for the intern themselves?
Getting real world experience in an actual organization is very, very different than what you learn whenever you're studying the BABOK. When we wrote the BABOK, we knew we were talking concepts, but learning how to actually work with a PM, learning how to create your stakeholder digest, whatever you have to do as an actual intern is hands-on, boots on the ground experience. And it's a very different kind of learning. It's also a very different way to grasp the concepts, hands-on. So interns they get so much more out of the job other than just having a job and maybe getting a paycheck.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think for I think interns have an opportunity, or people have an opportunity through internship, probably a better way to put it, of really understanding whether business analysis is right for them as well. I think it's albeit a relatively modest glimpse into the world. Probably as an intern, you're not getting involved in all aspects of business analysis, but it is at least a good opportunity to see, does business analysts do the type of work that you as an individual would be interested in? So as an example, if you like meeting new people, you like learning, you like understanding people's problems and helping try and improve their situation, then I can definitely say that business analysis is the right role for you, or one of the right roles at least.
Yes.
But perhaps if you have none of those character traits and you find yourself in a BA internship, that might be a good opportunity to realise maybe there's something a little different that you might be better suited to, as it were. Hopefully not, of course. But you never know. And the point you made as well about that sort of real world experience, that opportunity to work with stakeholders, project managers, to see what they need of business analysts, can really consolidate that conceptual knowledge that you've picked up through
Yes.
the BABOK, IIBA courses or sessions, or just other training that you might have gone through as well. So yeah, I totally agree. I've had no think about it. I totally agree. Um, in terms of those interested, what particular channels do you think there are for for individuals to secure an internship in business analysis?
I think there's two main channels. One is going to job fairs. You're going to talk to people that represent organizations. They're recruiting, they're looking for people. And you can talk to them about what opportunities are available because sometimes it's internships as well as jobs. Another one is relationships. talking to your college professor about what the opportunities may be coming up, talking to your dad's best friend about the opportunities that they may be aware of. People hire based on relationships over applications. So if they say, I know this guy, I've watched him grow up, he's a sharp guy, I think he would be really good for this position, that's going to get you in the door a whole lot faster than sending in an application. But you've got to reach out to create those relationships and ask the question, do you know of anything that's coming up or maybe available? Sometimes just asking the question may create the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, I think, because it means that, rather than be totally reliant on getting awareness of a post that there's a company taking internships and you're in the right place at the right time to take advantage of that post and hoping that you'll then be successful. There's a lot of ifs in that, and actually maybe it'll improve your chances and improve the experience if you're able to think ahead of time. Where would I like to go? Who would I like to work for, irrespective of whether they have internships? Go and introduce yourself to somebody, who works at the organisation, whether that's, as you say, at job fairs. It could be through LinkedIn as another opportunity. It could be through those network and relationships, because we're never one or more than, I think is it 2 or 3, possibly 4 at most, connections away from anyone. So we should definitely take advantage of that. And I think just expressing your interest in the first instance is probably like a major milestone in the internship journey. I think once you've expressed your interest, maybe made a commitment to be an intern in a BA sense, then what steps can you take to really improve your chances, I think.
Right.
And probably for speaking to other potential interns as well, maybe those that are going through the process themselves, who can possibly guide you on where they've come across BA internships, or possibly those, probably more successfully, those that have been successful the years prior and secured BA internships, especially those that maybe they can give you an inside track on how they applied or who they applied to or what sort of skills that those recruiting were looking for as well. But I think it all boils down to that proactivity and those relationships that your original answer sort of all stemmed on, really.
Yes.
And could you share a little bit of your own experience, Thea, in terms of internships? So whether that's as an intern, a leader of interns, or even just as a mentor.
Well, whenever I was very early in my BA career, let me tell you the truth. I didn't even know that the term business analyst was a real term. I thought I made it up. And I kind of did my own internship whenever I went into organizations, and I tried to figure out what to do because I didn't know about the IIBA. The BABOC 3.0 hadn't been written yet, things like that. So I feel like I was an intern without having the title. So whenever I have younger people coming in or new people coming into an organization, I understand what that's like. And so I do the mentoring thing. I ask them, do they have any questions? Are they aware of this resource? Would they like to come and shadow me in this meeting? Just trying to give them more experience than they would have had otherwise in knowledge. But I'm always very cognizant of the idea that you can't give them all your knowledge. They can't drink out of a fire hose. You have to figure out where they are and give them that one step next so that they can connect it to the knowledge that they have and it makes sense. If you give someone knowledge that is beyond their ability, their current realm of knowledge, they don't have anything to connect it to. And so they hear the words, they don't know what they mean. They're not going to remember it, and they're certainly not going to be able to put it to use. So that's the way I try to approach any new person coming into an organization, whether they're a BA or not. But on the other hand, let's talk about creating internship opportunities. I've been working with several people trying to get companies to take in interns. What's in it for them? They get a low-cost, highly engaged, and highly enthusiastic worker. They get a worker that maybe hasn't been messed up by some other company already. You know how some people,
Yeah.
you learn bad habits, or you learn wrong information. Well, do you want somebody to come in to your company and learn the way your company does it as their first experience? What a great way to do it. Bring in an intern. To have an internship program, though, you need to have a model in place. They need education, they need support, they need two mentors. They need a mentor inside their organization, and then they need inside like their group, and then they need a mentor in an adjacent group. You know, it would be really hard for me, John, as a new employee. I have this question. I feel like it's going to be really embarrassing and make me look bad. I don't want to ask the person that I'm partnered with because I don't want them to think I'm ignorant. But I would be more likely to ask the person in the next group over, you know, and
Yeah.
if they're willing and supportive, I can get the information I need and I can continue to shine. So having a good structure in place to support an internship program is really, really crucial for the success of the organization, the success of the program, and the success of the intern.
Yeah, no, that makes also a load of sense. I mean, because it makes me think that actually for organisations that are thinking about bringing in interns, having a clear view of the curriculum or the type of work that they're going to do in during their internship, rather than I guess the opposite is, which is an intern turns up on the Monday and it's like, right, where they're going to go, who they're going to work with, what they're going to do. That is only going to end
Yes.
in a negative way, you know. And obviously, people might say, well, the internship's only for a limited amount of time. What damage could it do? But actually, you lose the opportunity to make a good first impression, if nothing else. And you know, if you start off on the right track, you really are supportive of that intern, and you then when you're getting the most out of them, you know, where's the first place they're going to want to come when they're not looking for an internship? They're actually looking for a full-time role. Hopefully, they'll come back to the same place, which is, of course, a big advantage to the organisation. Of having interns means that it's a relatively low-risk way to yeah, give exposure to the individual, to the organisation, and to different things you do. But in doing so, have an opportunity to appraise that individual and see how they work, see how they would fit from a cultural and ability perspective with your organisation. Um,
Yes.
and sort of develop them that way, as it were. So it seems like there's so many advantages, I think, for organisations when it comes to having interns that possibly they don't always appreciate in that sense.
I agree. I think that the intern experience needs to be documented, mapped, just like the customer journey does or the employee onboarding journey. It needs to be
Yeah,
mapped so that you know what information do they need when. You don't want to make them sit for 6 hours where you say, I've got to find you a laptop and I don't know where you're going to sit yet, and I'm not sure what project you're going to be on. What a horrible experience for everyone. You know, if you have it set up ahead of time and you have a place for them and you make them feel valued and welcomed, they're going to think about that whenever they're talking to their friends who are looking for jobs. You know, they may say, I was an intern there. I didn't go on to get a job there, but it's a great place to work. I would highly encourage you to go apply. That's marketing for your organization. That's getting you
that's
good
right. Yeah,
employees.
yeah. And of course, while that person's in there, they might refer people they already know that are very good in other ways to the organisation. So there's so many connected parts to a good internship experience, I think, you know. And
Yes.
it's probably maybe a little different in a way. If we had internships at age 65, maybe there isn't much to lose if you have a negative experience, because you know probably people are not going to work forever, right? But if you're 25 or you're 20 and you're doing an internship, you've got this ability potentially to tap into up to 40 years of someone's working life as a result if it's positive. You know,
Right.
always seems quite scary to people talking about that amount of time. But
And think about this. Some interns are fresh out of college. They have the bleeding edge information that you might not have in your organization. They could say, well, wait, I just saw this app. I'm bringing in new information. I'm bringing in new ideas. I'm enthusiastic about,
yeah,
showing you some things that maybe you haven't seen. You're getting new things into your organization instead of not only being siloed within the organization, being siloed within the company. You need the fresh blood sometimes.
that's it. Yeah, I think for interns, I think internship programs that I've been have awareness of anyway, in organisations that I've worked for and with. They tend to enable the individual to get exposure to different parts of the organisation. So not just maybe BA is part of it, but they'll possibly get exposure to project management as an example, maybe a bit of development, maybe a bit of program management, maybe other completely different things. But by having exposure to many things throughout your internship gives the ability for you to step back at the end of the experience and think, actually, what worked? What did I enjoy? What would I like to do more of over the next few years? Where do I think my skills align?
Yes.
So it's definitely beneficial to the individual from that perspective, and it's a good opportunity to maybe get exposure to areas where traditionally people don't get that opportunity. So for example, when most of us join an organisation, we join with a particular role in mind. We don't get the opportunity to try out other roles over the course of our first year or so. As an example, we tend to be business analysts throughout that time. So an intern is a really good opportunity to test test yourself, learn about new areas of the organisation, learn new roles potentially as well. What I appreciate is only to a limit. But I like the point you made earlier as well about giving your knowledge one step at a time, only based on their ability. Because I think it's no good diving in and sort of giving interns loads of very technical jargon and talk to them about complex, like in my case, complex financial services situations that will mean nothing to them. And therefore they're not going to learn the techniques that you need them to. Instead, couldn't we sort of try and apply their real life scenarios that they are already familiar with and try and think about how they might use some of those BA techniques or those change techniques to benefit themselves and those around them. So that tends to work. And of course, as an intern, you've probably, if you're not already in education, you're probably not far left it behind. And I think there's examples therefore in education where we need to plan what we're about to do. We probably need to build relationships across the campus, as it were, with different lecturers and different student bodies, as another example. There's probably inefficiencies and areas where there's not a sufficient structure, and it'd be good to have a view of what they're currently doing and how to improve that process. So I think just from those simple examples, I think it can be easy, if we think about it appropriately, to align the skills that we're going to develop in our interns and align it with the experience that they have prior to becoming a BA intern.
Right. I agree with you.
And I wonder, we were talking about skills and actually coming on to that topic. So are there any particular skills, Thea, that you think individuals can learn through participating as a BA intern or an internship in general?
It's an interesting question because it's going to absolutely depend upon their organization that they're put in and what responsibilities they're given. But I would say that probably the number one skill that they're going to learn is how to present themselves. I mean, whenever you're going through college or, living at home or whatever, people know you, you know them. You don't have to present yourself, but you're walking into a brand new situation and you figure out how to do the elevator pitch pretty quickly. This is who I am. This is where I came from. This is what I'm here for. And this is what I can do for you. Walking into brand new experiences. For some people, extroverts, that's exciting. For people who are more introverted, it's not so exciting. But you need to learn that it won't kill you and you can do it and there's benefit to it. You're also going to learn some communication skills. You're going to learn some new language, some terms that you didn't have prior to that. You're going to learn how to convey information to different levels within the organization. What you talk to a developer about is going to be very technical. The business is going to be kind of a mid-level, and then the executive is very, very brief. How to convey the information they need instead of, look how smart I am, I wrote this paper for my professor. It's, who am I talking to and what do they need from me and in the format that they need it from. That's not something that they're necessarily going to have before they get into a work situation. And so I think as a mentor, as an intern, you have that opportunity to gain these new insights.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think, I don't know, is the term telephone voice, is that something that you use in the States?
Say it again.
Is telephone voice, is that a term you've heard of before?
It is not a term I've
No.
heard of. What does it
So
mean?
we've got a term that some of us use in the UK, which is having a telephone voice, because what it recognises is that we might talk in a particular way with our friends and family. That when it comes to being on the telephone and when you're taking a business call, as an example, that you can't always speak that way. You can't always speak with
It's true.
maximum informality, as it were. And
Mhm.
there is almost that telephone voice that some of us have to develop in order to be credible and to start, engaging with stakeholders in the right way. Um, and it's interesting. The reason that comes to mind is that as you were talking about communication skills and language skills, that can often, for me, was very much part of my earlier working experience. Recognizing that you can't just pick the phone up and talk to customers or talk to others internally the way you might talk to your friends. You need
Right.
that. I'm not sure you can really learn it unless it's on the job, because it's you can understand the concepts of it, I'm sure, in the classroom, but it's probably quite difficult to practice it until you're speaking to different people with different mentalities and different roles as well.
I
And
agree.
of course, it doesn't have to just apply to the telephone. I think it applies obviously to any type of business interaction. But that for me is a big skill, and definitely part of that, as you mentioned, is presenting yourself. Because before we get the opportunity to talk to our stakeholders and learn what we need to from them, we need to convince them that we're worth talking to and that we're
Sure.
credible to be talking to them. So
Yes.
and maybe for an intern, they might think, actually, maybe I don't feel like I have too much to offer in that sense. But of course they do. They have that fresh perspective that if they remind themselves that they have it and remind their stakeholders that they have it, I think most people would welcome a fresh pair of eyes on their situation to be able to
Mhm.
say, is that logical? You might have been doing it for several years, but it doesn't seem logical to me as an intern that you're doing that, because I've got a fresh pair of eyes. And maybe it is logical, but maybe you need to explain it, think about it. So I think that is a massive benefit and opportunity for anybody who has interns to leverage that fresh perspective.
I agree. I agree. I think having someone come in to just be able to explain what you're doing to them makes you have to re-examine it in a way that maybe you haven't looked at in a while.
Yeah,
And there have been times I've seen organizations bring in somebody, sometimes it was me, and I would say, "So why are we doing this?" And they explain it to me, and I say, "So why don't we do it this other way?" And they go, "Oh, we never thought of that." But having fresh eyes, fresh blood come in gives you an opportunity to re-examine things in a way that you didn't before. And honestly, it being an intern is a lot less threatening than an auditor or
yeah,
a consultant. It's like I'm just talking to them. I have nothing to lose by talking to them. If you're talking to a consultant or auditor, you have all the pressure. So you really have benefits of having an intern come in just to have your it's almost like a health check for your group and your processes. It's going to
yeah.
reveal what the health is.
That's it. Yeah, I would agree. And it's interesting actually, you're thinking about that, because it makes me think that, our customers, it's not like we work in an organization where we're all off planet somewhere, right? Our customers are obviously other people. And this is an opportunity to bring someone who's possibly got a similar mindset to some of your customers anyway. So,
Right.
I mean, they're not being polluted by the faults of the organization yet, because they're just fresh in. Try and
Right.
uh, try and say something. If you've looked at this situation from a customer perspective or from an external perspective, what do you think? Does this seem logical? Are you getting the best experience?
Hmm.
Is it quick enough? I think there's
Right.
so much. I feel like we might be creating a rod for the backs of interns, as they might be given a whole lot more to do. But I think there are definitely advantages to both them and the organisation from this anyway. Yeah.
I agree.
I wonder. I think we've touched on a few things that have partially answered this question. But are there ways that interns can quick learn to how interns can quickly learn or contribute in a meaningful way when they arrive on a role? And I guess
I
that's
think
beyond what
very
we've just been talking about in terms of that outside perspective.
uh, I think I think they can be set up for success by being told or maybe having to ask, what what does success look like for me? What would you want to see in a week or in 3 weeks or in a month for me to be successful as in this role? I think that's something that every employee ought to ask whenever they walk into a role anyway.
Yeah.
What does success look like for me? What do you need from me? Because it's too easy to assume. You gave me this job. I know what the title is. That means I know what the job is. It's not the same in every organization. And so you really can't assume. So having your success factors laid out is really beneficial to being successful. And then having check-ins with your mentors or your boss periodically, and be proactive about setting up those check-ins. Say, you gave me success factors for at 3 months. At 2.5 months, I'm going to be setting up a meeting with you to review my results. You gave me this, I did these things. You gave me this, I did these things. In addition, I did these other things that line up with the values and the goals of the organization. Now, what do you need me to do next? Give me my new goals, my new target.
That's it. And you're right to mention that it applies to everybody, not just interns. But having that clear view of what success looks like, what you need them to do, how to communicate with you and connect with you, I think is really, really important. I think as well, giving interns really meaningful, valuable work as well is very fundamental. I think it's possibly or theoretically easy to think, right, we'll just dump the admin and the boring stuff on the interns. And yeah, maybe I'm sure they can do it. That's probably not a question worth exploring. They probably can do it. But what's the benefit? Because presumably before the intern arrived, there was someone else doing it already. Hopefully, for their sake, that wasn't the only thing they were doing. But by giving this like less valuable, meaningless work, or at least the entirety of their work being meaningless or invaluable, it's not adding any value to the intern's career. It's definitely not helping them with their opinion of the organisation, and it's probably not helping the organisation either as well. So I think and it probably goes back to the point you made before in terms of that preparation. For employers to think about how is it that they believe interns can really contribute in a valuable way, and making that part of that what does success look like conversation, so that both parties are getting the most from it, actually.
I think it's important that anytime you give an intern or employee a job, you explain to them what the benefit to the organization is for that job. And if they don't hear it, they should say, why are we doing this? What benefit does it bring? How does it align with our goals and values? And if we don't have that answer, maybe we shouldn't be doing the job. But an example of something that I think would be great for an intern to take on that seems like it would be meaningless is some of the regulatory compliance reporting. You got to gather all of this data. If you don't explain to them that the organization will be shut down if this isn't accurate, so it's really critical, that brings a whole new light to it. Instead of you're doing this really boring, repetitive, tedious thing, and there's no value to you're keeping the lights on for us. And we really rely on your accuracy. And so that's why it's really critical that it gets done. It gives them an understanding beyond I'm doing a task to I'm doing a task because, and how that hits business rules and regulatory and how the organization functions. And I mean, a much bigger insight as to how organizations are created instead of this organization makes widgets. It's so much more complicated than that, but you don't get insight unless you get your hands in there.
Yeah, I agree actually. Yeah, and it makes me think that that feeds naturally onto not just the expectations around what it is that the interns doing or why they're doing it, but also like the quality type expectations and so what does quality look like from an internal perspective? What does quality look like from our customers' perspective? Giving them that appreciation early is really important because I can take myself back to the first job I was ever doing. And I was given a task of sort of inputting some data, and I recall my first instance or so. I was just putting stuff in, right? And I know I'm not sure I was being as thorough as I should be because I really wasn't that informed as to the implication of poor data, as it were, or cutting corners. And I think just spend a bit more time with the interns explaining the implication of what it is you're doing, why it's important for maybe sometimes a bit more time and emphasis on quality rather than quantity and speed, can be really
Yes.
helpful to set some examples and hopefully sort of set a trend in the I guess that person's working approach really, that they always from that point put the emphasis on quality rather than just time, as it were.
I agree. I agree. Here's an example, and it's not directly a corporate intern. Um, I had an employee come into a Target store, and what I needed them to do was clean up a display. There were things that had been unfolded and held up and dropped, and we needed the stacks folded properly and color coded by size. And so if I said clean up this display and make it look good, that's one thing. But if I explained what the customer's experience would be whenever they come up and they see the messy display versus a clean display, that gives them an understanding insight. On top of that, if I say, then they're looking for a specific size, if the sizes are in order, they have that expectations that they can find things, and it gives them an impression that our whole store is organized. And showing the impact of this is the work you're doing, but this is what it's going to do for us. Here's how it's going to impact the customer. Here's how it's going to solve a frustration. Here's how it's going to make them want to engage with us in the future. That's a huge, huge change in presenting a problem or presenting a work.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a natural bridge then to think even longer term than that in terms of, maybe the person who's the intern at that time or any employee, they might not see themselves always working in that organization or that company.
Sure.
And I can't see any situation where it's a good thing for an employee or someone who's leaving employment, that the place they're leaving to have a bad reputation, as it were. So that as good a reputation the organisation you work for has, the better opportunities I think you'll have going forward. So therefore,
That's true.
it's a good opportunity for you as an intern to have your stake in influencing others' view of your organisation, so that when it's time for you to leave, actually they go, okay. I think you mentioned Target
Right.
in that example, right? So like, oh yeah, Target. I remember working there. I remember the experience I had when I went looking for clothes, and they was all stacked in the right order. I found what I needed. The staff were really helpful. There's no negative no negative uh, um, association there with that organisation in
Right.
that example. So if I've got someone coming to me from Target who are looking for a job, actually, I'm probably going to think favourably of them, from that respect. And I think maybe just thinking longer term for the individual can really help them appreciate the knock-on effects of their good performance, as it were.
Right. Hey, John, let's talk about the connections that you make as an intern. You get
Yeah,
exposure to people that you would not get exposure to otherwise. And it may be, the person you're working with, it may be your boss, it may be the developer on your team. But I've heard several people in the last year say, somebody reached out to me because we had worked together 6 years ago or 10 years ago, and they remembered me and they were curious if I was available for this new job. And they got jobs because of it. But creating those relationships, and I'll tell you, this is a secret, write down people's names and keep in keep the relationship going even after you leave that internship or after you leave that job, because
yeah,
those relationships are critical, not just for your benefit, but to be able to help them. People need help sometimes. Everybody needs help sometimes. And creating that, you get this exposure as an intern you're not going to get whenever you're in college. You
that's
have
right.
different
Yeah,
exposures in college, but this is brand new. This is a totally different kind of relationship. They see you in a professional setting. They think of you as a potential professional as an intern, and they see what skills that you bring to the table. They'll think of you in the future whenever there's new opportunities.
that's right. Yeah, yeah, it's really, really valid point because the opportunities don't always come up in their organisations, but they'll know someone who's got opportunity if they're looking for a role and certain expertise. I think, okay, I remember
Right,
this intern I worked with last year. I wondered they're free, and I think if you've got a really good opinion of them, sometimes
right.
implicitly it's almost like you don't always write their name down, but but you certainly remember who they are. But sometimes we do actually write their names down as well, and sometimes we go out of our way to recognise interns. So I'm thinking of an example fairly recently. We had some apprenticeships individuals come and join some sessions with us about apprenticeships. And one particular individual in the session gave a really positive impression all the way through. Asking really good questions, showing he really cared about what we were telling, and took the time afterwards to write a nice note to those that presented to him afterwards. And I was like, that really had a big impression. So I was more than happy to sort of go and give someone a bit of my recommendation. I thought that particular individual performed particularly well in the session I was in as well. Hopefully that gives them the opportunity. But even if it doesn't, I would expect that when an opportunity comes up in the future and someone says to me, I'm looking for an intern or I'm looking for, an apprentice in this case, I would be quite happy to recommend this individual on a relatively modest amount of time as well. So it's just a very good impression and in a modest
Very,
amount of
very
time.
nice.
You know,
I think it's really critical that you represent who you are out loud so
yeah,
that people can have the opportunity to hear you and see who you are. I actually had a recruiter the other day say if she didn't receive a thank you note or an interview, she didn't consider them any further. Because if they're not going to be polite and considerate in little things, they're not going to be in the big things. And she wants to represent the really good people to her potential employers. And I thought that was really harsh, but I kind of see her point at the same time. So that person that sent you the thank you note after asking really good questions stand out a lot more than someone who just sat there and listened and disengaged. They could be equally as interested. They could be equally as
yeah.
smart and have equal abilities. But the person who spoke up and sent you the thank you note is memorable. So it's kind of like learning a dance. You got to learn the dance of interaction and being visible
That's
so
right.
that people
Yeah.
can engage with you.
I think it's a way to show that you care as well. I think if as an intern, and an individual events, you can show people you're interacting with you care. Actually, to them, it is a massive advantage to them. It gives them a little bit something back for their time, and their input. I think so. And I think it's not always easy to read that appreciation. So if you explicitly get that appreciation afterwards, it can really help. Help solidify that actually the person presenting perhaps was doing the right thing, but also that you really were interested, and actually maybe I wouldn't have considered you had I not known you was interested just by your personal appearance, as it were.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but yeah, so definitely that demonstrates, I think, that proactivity needed as an intern in, yes, doing well in everything that you can, but seeing how you can go that little bit step further. And I think it might, maybe to some, it might appear like a little bit too much hard work, but I think it's very, very easy for that to very quickly become a habit, and then it's not hard work anymore because you're just doing it as a habit, and these are good habits to be forming, I think.
I agree. I would like to think of it as a return on investment. I'm going to spend 2 hours sitting in a meeting listening to somebody, and my goal is to get a job. So if I'm going to be 3 times as likely to get the job if I engage, speak up, shake hands, and send a thank you note, it's a good return on investment.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And when we think of it that way, that's a very compelling way for an organisation to think, actually, is it worth doing? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wonder, I mean, we've spoken a lot about the many, many positives. I know there's loads of them. But are there any, I'm not going to call these negative points, but perhaps challenges? I mean, are there any challenges involved, you think, in either running an internship or participating in an internship, be that from a mentor's perspective like yourself or even from the intern's perspective?
I think if you have a good company culture, it's a whole lot easier. If your culture is toxic, it's going to be very, very difficult to run a successful mentorship internship program. Because seriously, bringing anybody new into the organization, it's always that, that team formation thing. You got the formation you've got to go through, but it also is going to be a health checkup of where the problems are. I've heard too many companies that had difficult cultures. People would come and they would come to work and leave for lunch and never come back. That is a big red flag that you've got a problem. And it may be that person had a problem. But if that's consistent behavior, if that's consistent pattern, it's the company's problem, not the person's problem. So if people don't continue to engage, if they don't engage throughout the entire internship experience, they're an indicator, they're a barometer that you have a problem in your culture. And it's up to you to fix it. It's up to you to protect them. It's up to you to engage with them and provide them an experience that shows them what the good company culture is that you have.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like almost like another aspect that organizations thinking of participating in mentorship can consider in terms of, absolutely, just considering, have they got the culture, as you said, to make that internship successful? But, maybe a different way to think about it as well is that can they use this internship program as a way to look and improve the culture across the organization? Because I think from an internship, it's probably a bit more obvious that you need to provide that support and that you can't just push new interns into a task, leave them alone and hope they'll get the right outcomes. But that's actually exactly the same if you've got someone who's been in the organization 20 years and you've given them an activity, So I think, maybe flipping things around a little bit and using the internship and the lessons you learn and the preparation you need to do, use that as a catalyst to improve the culture, can be probably another opportunity for the organizations that they hadn't perhaps considered.
I think every company should examine their culture aggressively. This is a hard one because it's all relative. If I feel like it's a good culture, you can be sitting beside me feeling like it's a bad culture. But identifying what the problems are that cause the most grief and frustration and turnover to your employees is worth it. Why wouldn't you want the very best culture possible? Why wouldn't you want a company that people want to work at for decades? They want to ask their children, hey, you need to come get this job. It's a great place to work. You're going to love it. Why wouldn't we? So, of course, let's use every tool possible to make our culture better.
Yeah, couldn't agree more on that one. And I definitely can't add anything of value to what you've said there. It's absolutely spot on. So I think maybe we can have one more question, I think, and then we'll bring things to a nice close. I feel like we covered a load of stuff, actually, that is hopefully very useful to those thinking about internships or even thinking of bringing in interns. I wonder, is there any further or final advice that you might give to organizations or to students in relation to internship that we haven't covered? I know that's quite a broad and possibly a difficult question, but any other bits of advice, I guess, that you might want to share?
For companies that are considering internships, identify your goal. What is it you want to do? Or is it purely to help the interns? Is it to vet potential future employees? What is the actual goal? And then what experience do you need to provide to the interns to make it beneficial for them? They've got to have a reason to come. Everybody needs a what's in it for me thing. So identify those goals. What benefits do you want to give to those interns? And then lay it out like a customer journey and talk about the touch points and talk about what equipment you need to have in place and what firewall sign-on things that you need to have in place. And maybe you can create a template of this is the intern sign-on, and that way, once you get it done, it's like everybody has the same one. Create a mentor group so that the mentor group can take on the mentors. It's very reasonable to say, I'm not going to get along with every single intern. It's not going to mesh. Personalities don't always work perfectly. Although I'm a very nice person, there might be very nice people, but it's not always going to be the best fit. So have an opportunity for different mentor styles with different interns, and then have ways to check in periodically and find out what success looks like. How do they feel? What do they think of the company? What things do they see that can be improved? They're going to come up with ideas that will benefit the organization, and will also help the mentors be better bosses and better listeners and better employees, and benefit the organization that way. And then at the end, have a way to recognize the contribution made by the intern and recognize the benefit to the intern that they received at the, document it so that you can say, yes, this person was an intern at our organization. They accomplished these things. They said that they ended up with these things. We saw this growth. And then send that to HR and let them be responsible for sending it out whenever people say, they cited you as a former employer for an internship. So have that ready to go, because that's what they need. If you're not going to hire them directly, they need a way to say what they got out of your organization was beneficial to them. And then, of course, with all retrospectives, take the lessons learned and implement, make things better.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say for the mentors.
Yeah, I mean, really, really good advice there, actually. And I mean, I'm definitely not going to repeat that advice. It's all really, really solid advice. I think really, yeah. I mean, I can't say anything more than that. To be fair, you've hit the nail on the head. There's nothing else I can add that will add any value at all. So I'm not going. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to zip up the mouth and chuck away the key.
Well, let me say one more thing. I am personally aware of 30 to 50 very experienced business analysts that are looking for internship opportunities because they need experience either in the country that they're currently in, or they need their first internship. They need their first corporate job. Some of these people come from other countries. They've got master's degrees. They've got certifications. Yeah. They are highly qualified, but because they don't have experience in that country, they haven't been able to get a job. So internship is the next best thing. We need companies that are interested in taking this on. And I know in some countries there's an internship that's a no-pay internship, and then the other countries it's a low-pay internship. I'm sure there are places that they pay good money for interns as well. I'm just not aware of that. But we need the companies to step up and say, we want to help these people because they're going to be valuable employees to somebody. Maybe they'll be valuable employees to us. And I think that would give those folks hope because they bring the good skills. They just need the opportunity. And so internship is a really low-cost way to bring them in and give them the opportunity and see, are they somebody that can benefit our organization for the long term, or can they benefit the organization for the short term? And give them that ability to say, I have this on my resume now. I do have experience.
And that retrospective you spoke of a little while ago is a really good opportunity, I think, for the organizations to really take some time to consider the benefits of their internship and actually use that as a way to keep, and not just to them, but the benefits to the intern as well, and start communicating that externally to attract the best potential interns that they can get as well. Maybe, as we said earlier on, it's not just about interns. Interns speak to other people, so through interns, it's a gateway to your organization for many others as well. So maybe we'll leave it there. Probably one other thing to say, though, of course, which is just to thank you, Thea, for sharing your insight and your knowledge and your viewpoints. It's really valuable. I'm sure it is. So thank you very much. We'll look forward to speaking to you again from a BAInsights perspective, and of course from a personal perspective. I always enjoy our conversations, Thea. So thank you until the next time, really.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, by the way, as well. Okay, thank you, Thea.